Hello, folks. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania from the newsroom with this breaking news story over Russia, the Ukraine, the United States, and international powers. Earlier today in Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Moscow should consider formally recognizing the self-proclaimed republics in the eastern Ukraine as independent. Not long after that, he took the following step. I consider it necessary to take a long overdue decision to immediately recognize the independence and sovereignty of the Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic. Western officials said that Russia may be using this false claim about the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine as a pretext for an invasion, and that, of course, this recognition of independence could be part of that. Now, breaking news in the last half hour or so, President Putin signed decrees ordering military forces into two separatist regions, the two he recognized today, for peacekeeping purposes, as Moscow recognized the breakaway region's independence earlier in the day. He signed the decree recognizing the areas and an agreement of cooperation with the heads of the two regions, Denis Pushilin of the Donetsk People's Republic and Leonid Pashanik of the Luhansk People's Republic. Now, this formal recognition of these two proto-states prompted a outpouring of anger and condemnation from world leaders. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Biden would issue an executive order prohibiting U.S. investment trade in the breakaway regions. European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called Putin's recognition of the breakaway territories a blatant violation of international law and said the bloc would react with unity, firmness, and determination in solidarity with Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron called the declaration a violation of the sovereignty of Ukraine and called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. Boris Johnson signaled a willingness to hold off on imposing sanctions, but said Putin's move was a very ill omen and a very dark sign. Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO chief, accused Moscow of escalating the conflict and urged Russia to choose diplomacy. Emmanuel Macron had more to say, and they said the president condemns the decision. He is demanding an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, as well as the adoption of targeted European sanctions. It's clearly a unilateral violation of Russia's international commitments and a breach of Ukraine's sovereignty. Now, I'm not going to disagree with that, but isn't a founding principle of the United Nations self-determination of peoples? If the overwhelmingly Russian regions in eastern Ukraine wish for self-determination and choose it, is that a violation of the UN Charter? Anyway, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not at all impressed or thrilled with the president of Russia's decision to recognize these two breakaway regions, which he hasn't done since 2014. And why is he waiting until now? He's waiting until now because Joe Biden has ratcheted up this situation to create a conflict that is wholly unnecessary and is dragging the United States into a conflict with a nuclear armed state. Absolute lunacy and foolish strategic decision-making. Now, additional information earlier today coming out on this situation in Ukraine. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations said the United States has credible information that Russia has compiled a list of Ukrainians to be killed or sent to camps following an invasion. Now, are we talking about the fan favorite of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Joe Stalin's Soviet Union, or are we talking about Vladimir Putin's Russia? I'm a little confused. Do they really have lists of people to be killed and sent to camps? In a letter to the UN's human rights chief, according to NBC News, U.S. ambassador to the UN, Bathsheba Nell Crocker, said the U.S. had credible information that Russia had compiled a list of Ukrainians to be killed or sent to camps following an invasion. These were first reported by the Washington Post yesterday. We also have credible information that Russian forces will likely use lethal measures to disperse peaceful protests or otherwise counter peaceful exercise, perceived resistance from civilian populations. Now, for their part, the Kremlin has said, what? They refute the accusations, dubbing reports as a list of fiction when asked about it. You do understand this is an absolute fake, that it's a lie. This is what the Kremlin had to say. Crocker also said in her letter that other human rights violations, abuses in the aftermath of invasion were being planned in Moscow. And this is where the left loses the plot and they begin to lose credibility. Number one, we've seen no evidence. Nothing's been provided by this corrupt regime in Washington to indicate any of this to be true. The only thing we do know is true for a fact is that Russia hasn't recognized the independence of these two breakaway republics in eastern Ukraine, Donetsk and the other Luhansk. So that we know, Russia's confirmed that. We also know that Joe Biden lied about the number of troops on the border, claiming 127,000 troops had moved in positions, implying that they were in Belarus, when in fact the figure is 30,000, not 127,000. The 127,000, as I endlessly pointed out, is likely to be the total troop number for Russian forces in the annexed Crimea, annexed under Barack Hussein Obama and Joe Biden, with no action taken and no world threats of conflict over that. Most important part of the Ukraine, stolen from the Ukraine almost a decade ago. with no action from Joe Robinette Biden or Barack Hussein Obama. Yeah, so troops permanently stationed there, plus along the western boundary of the Ukraine. So Joe Biden lied about that as well. So we're supposed to believe this. Now, let me read this to you. Crocker said in her letter that other human rights violations and abuses in the aftermath of the invasion were being planned. So they're saying that authorities in Moscow are planning to abuse human rights. And these are the people they're going to target. Those who oppose Russian actions, including Russian and Belarusian dissidents in exile in Ukraine, as well as journalists, religious and ethnic minorities, and the LGBTQI community were being at risk. So this is where they lose the plot. First off, which ethnic minorities and why is Russia going to intentionally abuse and commit human rights violations against ethnic minorities in a Ukraine that they supposedly just invaded or occupying? Are they as dumb as the Nazis in undermining their position of popularity when they threw the Soviets out of Ukraine in 1941 and then began to proceed to execute and exterminate Jews at Babi Yar and other places? Do you think the Russians are that stupid? It seemed to me like Putin's much brighter than that. He managed to run the KGB. What does Joe Biden run? Nothing. They're actually going to target the LGBTQI community. There are lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and probably transgenders throughout the Russian Federation. Why in the world would they invade Ukraine just to commit human rights violations against lesbians, homosexuals, and transgender people? See, this is where they just try this nonsense and they think that that's going to appeal to people. They're going to fall for their horse manure. And this is where I just call into question the stupidity of what's going on here. Russia is going to invade the Ukraine so they can suppress homosexuals. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That's why Russia wants to invade the Ukraine, to oppress Russian and Belarusian dissidents. They already infiltrate security forces around the world. They infiltrate businesses and corporate boards here in America and all over the world. Why would they need to invade Ukraine to suppress these people? They could simply do the same thing they've done with dissidents in the past, send an assassination team and kill them. If they can kill Russian dissidents in the streets of London with umbrella darts, with cesium, they can certainly pull it off in the Ukraine, far less challenging. Total nonsense. The gobbledygook coming out of Washington makes no sense. We've been offered not a scintilla of evidence about this whatsoever, not one scintilla of evidence by this corrupt regime in Washington, D.C., which is leading us into a conflict. Now, will Russia invade the Ukraine? It seems increasingly more likely that it's possible. But of course, it's been prompted by the actions of Joe Biden. Has Russia recognized the breakaway republics in the east, the Donetsk and Luhansk? Yes, they confirmed to that they did do that. Is that acceptable? No. Is it worth going to war over? No, because we didn't go to war with the Crimea, a far more strategically important part of Ukraine in 2014. Why would we do this now? What strategic interest is there? There is none. None whatsoever. So breaking news today out of Russia, where Putin says he should recognize independent breakaway republics, and then he does recognize them. Then allegations by the State Department with no information whatsoever, just their claim that there are lists being drawn up to take out dissidents from Belarus and from Russia in the Ukraine, as well as journalists, homosexuals, lesbians, transgender. It's just beggars the imagination, folks. Will Russia invade? Seems like it's becoming more inevitable by the day, all driven by nonsense from Joe Biden. Thanks a lot, folks. Be sure to become a subscriber, smash the button right down there. Appreciate your support. Cheers. Take care of yourself.